Well, yeah, my name is David Reeves, and I've been a missionary in Togo for the last 10 years, and we've been doing an impact drilling method. It's slightly different than what Water 4 does, but they use some of the methods that I learned as well with the compression type bit. But we basically wanted to put together a learning station like this so that folks like you guys could come and see the possibilities, the options that there are out there for drilling in ways that are less expensive and also can be given to the people to empower the people. They'll be reproducible, they'll be sustainable for them financially, for them to not only be able to put it in the ground but also repair it and work on it. So there's a lot of different options out there. I didn't have any of my equipment, so when I was asked to do this, I immediately thought, Water 4, they're not far away, and I know that they will probably be happy to come down here and take part in this. So we just want to make it a hands-on moment and learn some different things. I'm mainly going to let Caleb do this thing because this is his rig and he knows what he's doing with it. I'm actually learning a little bit from him because these tools are different than my tools.
But what we can do, we hope to be good at a range of people. That range of people is folks that drill less than 100 feet for water, which you'd be surprised is actually almost everywhere. You can find water at less than 100 feet. And remote areas that don't have the money or the means to bring in a big machine. That's how most people do it. That's not exactly accurate, but it's not so far off. Lose the roof, lose the stone wall, and what you're left with is just a circle in the ground. Not so glamorous, but that's how it is. And most places where they don't have a machine, they don't have equipment like this, they just drill by hand. And so when you read about, especially in the Bible, when you read about wells, they're probably talking about hand-dug wells. Now, hand-dug wells can be as big as you want them to be, but most of them are about 3 foot or all the way maybe up to 6 feet in diameter. The reason for that is I can't make a 2-foot well, because once I start getting deeper underground, I'm swinging my tool. I don't have a tool small enough to swing my pickaxe and make my hole any farther. Plus, I'm hitting my own toe. So it's got to be big enough to where I can kind of dig out half of it and then clean it up, then dig out the other half. Does that make sense? So they're about 4 feet wide, so that's pretty common. You see that. One of the nice things about what we're doing is it's only 6 inches. It's only 6 inches wide. So let me introduce you now to, I'm sorry?
It's removing a whole lot less dirt.
And, right, and it takes less time. And let me say one thing about that before I introduce the tools. So what we're trying to do is leverage the things that everybody has, and even poor people have time, right? That may be all they have. They don't have anything else, but they have time. And they can work on something like this, and for an American kind of mindset, I think, oh, this might take a week, that's a long time. Or even a month, that's a long time. But really it's not if you think about blessing a community for hundreds and hundreds of years with water.
Exactly, yeah.
The water's there, it's going to recharge. That's how God made it underwater. It's recharging. It's filling back up. It's not going dry. So you're going to bless people that you know, great-great-great-grandchildren, and it only took a month. That's a small amount of time.
And it's not just drinking water. I mean, they're going to be able to drink it because it's clean, but it's also going to give them all manner of opportunities for irrigation, agricultural improvements. Their health's going to improve. The ramifications are just limitless. But in my experience in Togo, water is always that foundational principle, that base thing. You take the water out, they don't have water source, a reliable water source. A lot of other things in their lives suffer and fall away. So you're talking about something pretty foundational here.
So maybe it's a little more complicated than what I'm about to say, but kind of it's not. It's real simple. We need to get water out of the ground, so how do we do that? We want to make a hole to get to the water. And then once we get to the water in the hole, we want to be able to bring it back out. So there's 2 main parts. First, get to the water. Second, bring the water out. So the first thing I want to talk about, let's come right over here. I kind of have these tools set out in sort of 3 groups of how we use them. This tool here we call our auger, and you can see we have several sizes. Even hooked up over there is a different size. And this tool, it's so simple. It uses just like a screwing method to turn. You can see it's hooked up on that big piece of square pipe right there. And here in a minute we'll all grab handles and kind of twirl around, and it just screws into the ground. The dirt goes into the inside. Once the dirt gets full, I pull it out, I take it over, I clean it, and go back and repeat. So each time I'm pulling out, I don't know, about a foot maybe of dirt. And in a good soil situation, it doesn't take very long. You can go in and out in a couple of minutes. As you go deeper, it takes a little longer, but it's really, it can really go pretty fast. We have different sizes for different reasons that I won't get into now, but this is the workhorse of our tool. If we're able to use this, if we're able to continue to turn and get dirt, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing it. Let me just talk briefly about these, and then we'll go over there and do it. Sometimes when you start to drill, you can get to water and it starts to be wet, but you're not finished yet. Just because you hit the first little bit of water doesn't mean you're done. You want a deeper well than that. So as the stuff gets wet, sometimes it won't stay inside there, because the way the dirt stays inside there is just sort of gets pushed and pressured in there. But you can imagine if it's like wet sand, like you know how when you dig a hole at the beach, and then here comes the water, and then what happens? All that work is for naught. That kind of happens there too. You can hear it sort of flushes it out. So you have to use something like this. This we call our baler. It's hollow inside here. You can see it just has a door, a little flap. It just flaps open, just like Pac-Man. And you attach it to a rope, and you stick it down in there, and you bob up and down inside some water, inside some mud. It's kind of like soupy dirt soup. And you bob up and down, and it sucks all that stuff up in there. And that door can only open to the inside, not to the outside. So you pull it up, take it out, dump it from the top here, and all that stuff you can come out. So if it's dry, I'm using the augers. If it's wet and soupy, I'm using this baler. And if it's what we call refusal, which could be any number of things. Refusal could be rock, it's most common. Really hard clay can be refusal. Anything, do what now?
Tree root.
Tree root, yeah. You know, bones of a dead animal, I don't know, whatever's down there that's in your way, that's hard, that you need to break it, we're going to turn to one of these tools. Now, this single point chisel we call it, and the 3-prong chisel, they operate on the bottom of this sliding hammer. This works just like a regular hammer does. I attach it to the rope, I pull on the rope, comes up, I let go, it goes down. And people say, now does that really break a rock? Well, here, let me ask you, put your toe under there, and I'll lift this up and you tell me if it hurts, okay? Even underwater. Think about doing this in a swimming pool. Even underwater, if I had water in my hole, and I had a rock, even underwater, it's packing a punch. So you can see this little part here will receive this. We'll stick a pin through there and lock it so it won't come out. And then I'll reciprocate the hammer, and it'll dig into the ground. Now, what that's going to do is break whatever is hard, hopefully. Not always, but hopefully. Break it into little pieces. And then you can go back and use the auger to wrap around those pieces and bring them out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any questions before we jump at that? I know I just told you a lot in a short amount of time. But I've learned in Africa, I just came back from Africa a couple months, spent there, I learned sometimes it's better not to even talk. It's just let's get our hands on there, and me and Vadas and David will show you how to do it, and then we're just going to hand it over to you and let you do it. Sound good? Yeah. All right, let's do some drilling. To do. You can see the mud is wedged in there, and this is how you want it to come up each time, full of goo. And then I come over here and I clean it out. And then we do it again. So let's do it again. Typically, when you drill, you have 2 people. Vadas is going to take that other handle there. 2 people that operate the handles, and then David is going to come in here with his hands up above us and try and hold it in the middle, because we don't want our pole flopping around, because we want to be able to drill as straight as possible. Okay? So, anybody here play golf? Nobody? Well, I don't play either, but I've heard that in golf, like if I want to hit the ball in the air and I try to hit the ball in the air, it doesn't work. I have to let the club do the work. Have you ever heard that before? Let the club do the work. Well, in this case, the tool is doing the work. It digs. Sometimes David has to push down a little bit, but not really. You don't even have to. Okay, that's the thing's for
Nearly a couple feet.
That's great.
Some water sitting in the bottom.
Can I stick my hand in there?
We were talking about earlier how during this process, sometimes we might have 2 augers working at the same time. So while there's a full-time cleaner, you got another one going in. So you speed up the process a little bit. Yeah.
And I'm not using the biggest auger right now. Normally I would, but because this stuff is really dense and strong. Actually, the smaller tools are stronger than the bigger one.
Yeah, and it's
or like
easier.
a pilot hole.
It's easier to go through that way,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to hear you guys talk about Nicaragua. What is that?
I think we might have hit some rock. Yes, yes.
That's a question. Like, I mean, you're on top of a mountain.
You don't want to be drilling there.
Yeah.
This isn't ideal. We're doing this here because they assigned us this location.
Okay.
If I had my choice, I'd go down. Now, you don't always have a choice because where the need is, where the people are, and where they say, here is where I want it, is not always, you got to come in and delicately say, listen, I know you want it here, but you got to trust me, it'll be easier there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is there, like, I mean, is there water? Like, I mean, if you drilled a well on top of a mountain, would you be able to hit water?
Eventually, yeah. It's going to be harder. I'm of the opinion you can find water almost anywhere. It's just a matter of how deep you have to go.
You do this also?
I have to draw you a picture. I will at lunch.
Did you do that before?
But how the water operates in the mountain slope, if you've got a mountain slope.
Maybe we'll just go home and
How that water is, it could follow the slope, or it might not. It might be like stair steps on the way down. So depending on where you drilled, it would be harder or easier. So in a general rule, I avoid mountains also for the reason of what we just heard. Okay, was that rock?
That was rock. That was definitely rock. Refusal spot.
Okay. Well, good. We can play with more tools.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I'm just grabbing video for learning purposes. It's not for anything special.
Hey, where's my Boy Scouts? My people that know how to tie rope.
So the reason for the fatter pin,
Security.
just security,
Yeah.
because
I'm
you're
going to be reciprocating this up to several
lots
hundreds of thousands times down there.
impact pound pressure.
Yes,
So.
and when I come back out with it, the last thing I want is to see this thing not attached.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And it's happened to me before.
Okay.
I thought, well, geez, that's a lot lighter
That's
than
right.
it was when I put it down. I wonder why that is. Now, this little thing it'll pinch the snot out of you, but it's great for keeping these things attached. And I may need some pliers to do it too. Some people got strong here. There we go. Okay, and it slides on there and it'll, let me see.
I can tie that.
Back itself
And
off.
a back.
Because this rope is yachting rope. It's really expensive, really good rope. On the inside of that rope is another rope, and it's just like his arm inside his sleeve, and like one piece can back off like that. If I've seen that happen, like it starts to get frayed, and then it'll back off and it'll untie whatever knot you did. I don't care how good it was. It'll untie itself off. So the last thing I do is just tie this like in a slip knot so it can't back itself off. Okay.
I know.
It's dangerous because these tools are heavy and you gotta really be careful. As he's lifting them up, I'm controlling them, especially this one, because see how I'm standing here? I don't want this thing, as soon as it gets off the ground, keep going, Vadas, it's gonna start swinging. And I've seen someone holding it on this side before, and it swung and almost killed him. So that's why I'm standing where I'm standing. And he's gonna keep tension on there. We're gonna communicate, and I'm gonna say, okay, I'm over the hole now, lower it down slowly. And that's his responsibility at that point. I don't wanna get my fingers in here, because I don't wanna get pinched. Okay, now, are we already on? Now what we're going to do is, give me one wrap around. There's a lot of different ways you can, actually give me 2 wraps. A lot of different ways you can do this. The most common ways for weak guys, you don't need the handle right now. You don't need that right now. Yeah, just leave it. The best way for weak guys like this is, now look, if I pull up and down on this is what African guys like to do, yeah! You feel like a real man, but it wears you out after a while. We got a pulley up there, so if I do that exact same thing over here, I'm doing half as much work, okay? So I'll encourage them to kind of control it maybe with one hand, or even have someone else control it. Keep me in the middle of the hole. That's all your only job. And then I'm just gonna come over here and reciprocate. Now look, I can go more. I can go all the way up to here. But I don't wanna go there because I'm going to pop my tool away from the ground. And then it's going to become, I don't want the thing going bong, 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 bong. I want it to stay in the same place, and I just want to move the hammer on top of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my goal is to get as much of that up without going all the way and get into a rhythm with that. And then this thing becomes like the lot of ways you can handle problems. Like if this, as shallow as this rock is, if we were in a country right now, I would probably stop and I would pay some of the men that lived there that were working, that we were trying to help, to dig out one of those pits I was describing for you earlier, just to get down to that layer, because you can remove it by hand a lot easier. And then once they get past that layer, there'll be a 5-foot hole here, and somebody can just sit down in that hole and kind of control the tool, and we can just go on from there. I was in Uganda, and that's exactly what we did. It took a day to drill out 2 or 3 feet at the surface, but then after those guys got that out of the way, the next day we came back and went 40 feet in one day. I can feel it's already pretty hard down there. But
So then why the small auger?
the pilot hole.
Okay,
The smaller auger is actually the strongest.
gotcha.
Putting it on top right now.
That's okay. Just keeps... We've got a 40-foot well. Okay, 40 feet deep. It's got about 10 feet of water in it. That's a good well. Okay, if you get 2 feet, not quite enough. 10 feet, that's good. You want as much water as you can, but because it's time for us to go home and get on our plane and get back to the U.S., we're gonna have to stop. We got 10 feet of water in the well. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know how deep the well is? I'm gonna just do something simple like this. I'm gonna tie something heavy. That part is not supposed to be on there. I'm gonna tie something heavy, like this little fishing lure thingy, onto this string, and I'm gonna lower it down in the hole until I hear it hit the water, and I make a little mark, and then I'll lower it the rest of the way until I hear it hit the ground, and then I make another little mark. And when I pull it out, I'll be able to see how much water there is. The distance between one mark and another mark is how much water. The distance between that mark and this is how much air.
Right.
The total depth.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's again, well, imagine it's 40 feet long. I know these big pipes are 20 feet each, so I'm just going to pretend that we've measured it and it's 40 feet. So I come out here on the ground and I lay down my measuring tool, and that's how I'm going to know how to measure all my pipes and cut all my pipes. Got a little mark so I know how long my well is, so I lay it all out so everybody can see. Because down in the hole I can't see anything, but out here I can visualize everything. Okay? What did I say a minute ago? We have 2 main things that we do. One is we get to the water, second is we get the water out of the ground. Here's how we do that. Let's imagine this is the bottom, okay? And I said we have 10 feet of water. So from here to about here, this leaf is, there's my water, okay? I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna cut little slots with just a simple saw, so that the water can filter through this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The hole that we're digging is 6 inches wide. This is only 4 inches wide, so it's gonna slide down in there with a little bit of space on the outside. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm gonna cut little slots. However much water I have, I'm gonna cut the little slots. That's gonna be my filter later on, okay? I'm gonna cut slots. I know my well's 40 feet, so I've got 1 piece of 20 foot, 1 piece of 20 foot. I put the first one down in the well, and then I hold it. I don't let it go. Me and 4 guys hold it while 4 more guys pick up the next piece and raise it up tall and glue it on. Almost every country you go to, this is what the PVC is like. One of the ends of it is open like this, so you can just easily glue something into it. Okay? So imagine I'm standing at the surface, me and a couple other guys are holding this thing right here, and the other people are raising that up and gluing it in. Okay? Now, once the glue is dried, then we lower it down.
Which doesn't take long.
Doesn't take long. And now, let's imagine that this piece of duct tape is the ground level, okay? That's what we're standing on. So I have this much sticking out above the ground, okay? That's what I want. Because in the end, when I'm pumping, I don't want to be pumping up here or right here. I don't want to be pumping down here. I want to be pumping about right here in the middle, where it's easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll explain it in a minute, but you can see the handle here. If this thing is sticking just above that much of the ground, then that's going to be right where I want it. the pump, okay? Okay, now, I've got my 4-inch pipe, we call it the casing, down in there. I have a small space on the outside of my hole. I'm gonna put rocks, small little rocks, and sand down there to help act as a filter.
So after you put in the pipe, right?
After I put in the pipe. And that sand and stuff is not going to go on the inside, it's gonna pass on the outside. It's gonna go all the way down to the bottom, and it's gonna cover up all those little cuts that I made, and it's gonna be a filter. Because remember, the water's not coming in from the top like a waterfall. It's coming in from the side.
Seeping in, right.
And so as it comes in, before it gets to my well, I want it to pass through that filter and then go into my well. So it's cleaner, okay? All right, so now I have my 4-inch casing down there. I've poured my filter. I'm ready to put my pump down inside this, okay? Remember, again, this is sitting up about a couple of feet above the ground. Now let me show you the pump. David, can you grab a bucket of water? This is the pump. The guy that designed this is way smarter than any of us.
Excellent.
And it's super simple. It's complicated to design, but it's so simple. There's just a simple, like a straw almost, inside here. It pushes into and forces the water back out the top. There's just a little simple check valve, just a little door that flaps on the inside there. And each time I do this, it sucks the water in, then moves the water to here, then forces the water out. The water that's in the inside here actually just drips back out this hole and goes back down into the well. Because I don't want to lift very much water. If I'm lifting it a long ways, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So if I have only this much water, or at least this diameter of water inside here, even if it's going 40 feet to the top, that's not so heavy. Even a child can do that, okay? So, let me show you kind of,
excess water just go
it kind of drips out right here. And so in the end, what you can do, if you're pumping and you don't stop, you can do about 4 gallons a minute. So that's pretty fast.
Pretty
Plenty
good,
fast
yeah.
to fill up what most people use, buckets or whatever for. So it takes a couple of times to start sucking, but you can even hear it. Yeah, Christian's standing back because he knows something. Okay, simple as that, right? Now, if you cover up the end, you can even shoot it. So what does that mean? That means that the water comes out under pressure. So if I had a well sitting next to my little garden, before, the way that I watered my plants was I just carried a bucket and I took it in my hand and I just walked and I walked and I walked, and it was a pain. Now I got one guy pumping and one guy just spraying the water, kind of like we use sprinklers in the U.S. So we're not just talking about getting water to people so they can drink, but it's getting more efficient water to people so they can water crops. So
That's amazing.
They're not as hungry, now they can sell their food, now everything's better, okay? If somebody come give this a try.
So what about, I mean, this is obviously, did you all put this together? Is there a design that you can get your hands on that you can make this, or
yeah,
do you?
Our long-term goal, if we have partnered with someone for a couple of years, is that they could make this pump in country. But for now, it's so cheap and easy for us to make it, and we kind of play our cards a little close to the chest.
Understood, yeah.
So we can just, it's very common for me to send 10, 20 of these at a time to some country in the world.
Okay.
So,
because obviously, I mean, this is made out of PVC, so there's going to be, they're going to wear out
yes,
eventually.
And the idea is that you could either replace a part or replace the whole pump, because the whole pump itself only costs
Right.
$50.
Yeah.
But online, they say this will do 3 million strokes.
Okay, yeah, and that's an excellent point.
Approximately, right?
We haven't broken one yet.
Okay, excellent.
We've only been around for 2.5 years, so we don't know yet, but based on the simulations we did, and we actually took a pump and tested it there in the U.S. at a testing facility, and they just reciprocated it over. Dudley, give it a whirl. You want to?
Oh, no, you're doing great.
They reciprocated it 3 million times, and so if it's pumped 1,000 times a day for 10 years, that's 3 million strokes.
Wow.
And
okay.
When they quit testing it, it didn't break. That's not why they quit. They just quit because
They were tired of testing.
They were sick of it. And they found out at 750,000 strokes something happened. It quit pumping. And they called the guy and they said, hey, we failed your pump, 750,000. They said, great, we'll come by, we'll check it out. Turns out it didn't fail the pump. It failed the equipment that was testing the pump.
Oh, really?
It had sucked in some sand the equipment had, and the pump was doing just fine. It was even sucking sandy water through it.
Oh my.
But the equipment got clogged up, and they're like, oh, never mind, we got to keep testing it. So it'll last a long time.
Gotcha.
We believe it'll last as long as 10 years. Like I said, we don't know yet, because we're only 2 years old, but
Right.
I haven't seen one break yet. Okay. So we've got this pump now, and this is going to be the bottommost piece. This thing is going to be submerged down in my 10 foot of water, like our example is, right? Exactly. I don't put it on the very bottom because it's going to suck in the sludge. I don't want to do that. I put it just a little bit from the bottom. And then, oh, I forgot my little connector. So the water is not in here, remember, because it leaks out from the hole. The water only travels inside of here. I use this, it's got threads on one end, so I can screw it on here. And it's made to be glued on here. Same thing for this one. I slide this over that one, just like putting a long sleeve on my arm. All right. Slide that one over and do the same thing. Glue this on and thread it on here. I then take this piece, which is inside of this piece, all attached to this piece. I raise it up in the air. I drop it down inside of here. And now I'm trusting my measurements because I don't want to keep throwing that thing down until I get to the bottom.
Right.
But I'm going to lower it until I get to, everybody move. Until I get to this piece, and now me and a couple of guys who are very confident are going to sit there and hold it. While the other guys are going to come and do the exact same thing we did with the gluing before. Glue this on, glue that on, wait a minute for it to dry. And then, everybody move, we're going to keep pushing it down the hole until now we're standing at the surface. You can see for our example that we have a little bit more pipe than we need, so depending on your depth you would then cut this pipe. And that exact same little connector I used down there, upside down, I use it right here. I glue coming out of this and then I thread onto here. This is inside of this, and I do the same thing. I glue on the one end and thread on the other. Everybody with me? So this, when it's finished, looks like this inside of this.
Okay, so we've got PVC all the way, except now the pump itself is actually metal. So like somebody comes along and accidentally kicks it or backs into it or something, and then we've got something.
What we do is we make it water buffalo. So if a water buffalo roaming around, this is the only part that's above the ground. This is safe, it's below the ground. It can be PVC, it's okay. But above the ground here, I'll take a bucket. I'll cut the bottom out of a bucket. So I just have a cylinder. I'll slide it over this. I'll fill it with concrete. Okay?
Yeah.
And so the very top is like one of those, you know when you go into Walmart, how you can't drive your car into Walmart? because they've got those big things there. It's in case somebody's stupid and they try and drive their car. It's just like that. One of those big concrete pylons to keep them from driving right into water. Anybody have any questions?
That's
I blew through that, but I think you can
way
picture it.
simple.
I'm going to be pumping this right here, right? Which is in turn going to be moving this, which is in turn going to be pumping the pump.
And there will be a spout or something.
Yeah, you can take another piece of pipe and come out here and go back down with it. So it looks like a faucet, like a sink. You can do whatever you want.
Set your bucket on the ground, pump and pull.
Very cool.
Any questions? Okay, for time reasons, let's swap. So
That's great. Thank you so much.